Now we have this information about Joe Biden, as outlined by this FBI informant that, has alarmed normally reasonable, fairly quiet, moderate Republican lawmakers. And one of the interesting things about this is Jamie Raskin, he's the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. He's the Democrat who's saying, well, you know what? In August of 2020, Bill Barr and his, quote, handpicked U.S. attorney closed the assessment into this forum. This is old news. This is what the Democrats always say. This is old news. Bill Barr, a Republican under Trump, already closed this investigation, so there's no there. But Bill Barr happened to be on, he went on the Federalist on Wednesday and said, that's not true. Bill Barr said, I had a U.S. attorney take a look at the form just to see if we believed this was a credible source and worth further probing. And that U.S. attorney said, yes, it is. And yes, it is. And Bill Barr said, what we did at that point was pass the evidence on to the U.S. attorney in Delaware who had an open investigation on this. And Bill Barr said, quote, nothing was closed. And Comer was talking about this last night on Fox saying, people need to understand that is an admission that there is now an open U.S. attorney investigation into Joe Biden right now in the state of Delaware, in the federal courts in Delaware, presumably involving a grand jury. And this could, Charles, we could be looking at a situation where the two men running for president against one another on the GOP and Democratic side are both under indictment. That is possible.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying, given I'm so keen to draw distinctions, that if this is true, it is much more serious than the Trump indictment. Yes. They decide whether or not Trump did it. It's hard to find a way of looking at this if the facts that have been reported turn out to be correct, that is not utterly damning. Obviously, if Joe Biden was actually taking money from foreign organizations in exchange for changing government policy, then that is a big enough scandal that he should immediately resign in disgrace, if not be impeached or indicted. Even if he wasn't, why would anyone who wishes to be seen as above board, who says, as you noted in your previous segment, I am honest, set up this extraordinary, elaborate means by which to move money around? And I don't do that. I'm sure you don't do that.
There's no offshore accounts.
But the quote that I read in the New York Times was that the sort of labyrinthine way that this has been established, it could take 10 years to uncover. That was the intention. Well, why? Again, I understand that there could be differences when the truth comes out, and I understand that some people do have good reason to have a relatively complex, financial setup. But for the man who was a senator his whole life and then vice president and then moved into running for president, that is a very big red flag. So even if there was no provable quid pro quo here, that should alarm people in and of itself. If this turns out to be true, it's going to be a lot worse than the Trump classified documents scandal, which is bad, but is a scandal that seems to affect everyone. It affected Trump's last opponent. Mike Pence is now, under investigation for this. Joe Biden is himself.
Right. And there's no allegation that Trump actually shared these documents with one of our enemies. By the way, there were allegations that the Chinese had accessed Hillary Clinton's server and seen documents that they were not entitled to see. Another distinction that doesn't bode well for the Democrats here. Again, I just want to read again to this Nancy Mace quote to Fox News Digital after reviewing that document with the confidential informant. She said, there is damning evidence the sitting president of the United States sold out his country in an ongoing bribery scheme. My God. Again, this is not a lawmaker we know who is prone to hyperbole. With all due respect to Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think I'd be that moved if I heard that from her. But from Nancy Mace?
Well, and if you look back to when this story first leaked into the newspapers, the person whose name was all over it was Chuck Grassley, who was another person who is not really associated with hyperbole, who doesn't tend to get carried away, who's quite careful. And I thought at the time, well, that gives it some credence. But as you say, the fact that this has now been seen and echoed by Nancy Mace is telling. Usually when I'm on a show, whether it's yours or my own podcast or the editors at National Review, and Nancy Mace's name comes up, it's because she's savaging Republicans. That's why she makes the news. She criticizes
100%.
Republicans all the time. She has an ongoing feud with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Well, now both of them are saying the same thing. That suggests to me that she went into a room, she looked through this information, and she came out shocked.
Look, you did the tough thing during COVID. You paid your people and pulled your business through the pandemic. And now doing the tough thing could qualify you for up to $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org. Government funds are available to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. It's not a loan, and you don't have to pay it back. The program's complicated, but no one knows more about it than the CPAs and tax experts at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work and share a percentage of the cash they get you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, even those who took PPP loans and even if you had increases in sales. You did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. Now let covidtaxrelief.org help get you up to $26,000 per employee. Visit covidtaxrelief.org. covidtaxrelief.org, covidtaxrelief.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.